Hey guys, what's up? This is Meathead Mikkel from meatheadgaming.com, and today I'm going to show you guys a pretty awesome Bubble Madness video. It's a great Stunlock build that I'm working on. And before I get into it and explain, everything from start to finish and what you need and how you're going to put this together and how it's going to work, I'm actually just going to show you guys. Because if you saw my other perma-freeze video from the other day, I got some flack from a few people who thought the video was too long and I shouldn't spend all this time explaining everything, but there's a reason for that. And the reason is that if you don't know game mechanics, if you don't understand proc coefficients or why some spells work a certain way and some don't, you're going to be very confused about the game. So for those naysayers, I'm just going to show you, I'm going to get your attention first, and then I'm going to explain piece by piece what this actually does. So here we go, guys. Pretty crazy, right? And this is actually a variation of a build that you don't really need specific gear for, but I am using a specific part or a specific piece of gear that's actually letting me do this with great effect. And I'm not actually casting my damage spell right now, but you can kind of see how much this stun locks everything. Everything here right now is stun locked or frozen. And you don't really need that much to make this work. You actually only need one piece of gear. And I'm going to get into it in a second, and I'll also show this with elites and on bosses like Diablo and show you guys how well this works. So hopefully this got the attention of those of you who don't like to watch long videos where I explain everything. And if you think this is cool, but you don't want to watch a long video, then you can go ahead and leave right now. Otherwise, if you want to figure out how this works, then stick around and I'll explain everything. So the build kind of focuses on mirror images and slow time point of no return. Both of these are very commonly used in a lot of different builds. There's nothing special about them. It's just a nice way to get a few bubbles. But what's really interesting is cooldown reduction. And the other day I found the Gesture of Orpheus, which reduces the cooldown of slow time by 65%. So I thought a little bit about it, and I decided to go with a cooldown reduction build. So when you take everything into account, passives, cooldown reduction on items, I'm sitting at 42% cooldown reduction. Now this isn't additive, obviously, because this would make slow time instant cast all the time. There's some sort of multiplication for cooldown reduction. I don't know what it is. I'm not the best at math. But the point is it does reduce slow time to a very short cooldown. And what you want to do is you want to be able to spam slow time as much as possible. That way you get maximum stuns. So let me go over first my skills, and then I'll go over what I'm using in terms of gear. So right click, I'm using Frost Nova Cold Snap. This is really nice because it gives you a 3-second freeze duration instead of a 2-second freeze duration, and it lowers the cooldown for this. So actually, if I just do Cold Snap, you see it refreshes pretty quickly. And not only do you want a lower cooldown, it's going to help you with elites and bosses a lot, but the added duration is going to freeze them for longer, and it's going to become really important when you're dealing with elites and bosses because they have crowd control resistance. So if you use this Frost Nova on a regular mob, it's going to freeze them for 3 seconds. You use it on Diablo, it's going to freeze them for like maybe a second. So obviously you want something that you can spam as much as possible that's going to freeze for as long as possible. Now for our main skill, I'm using Arcane Orb, Frozen Orb. This is a freebie. You can use whatever skill you want here. Because this wand it does increase arcane damage, you might want to use an arcane damage skill like Disintegrate Wave or something. I just I just like it. I think it's a good damage dealer, but this is a freebie slot. Now, magic weapon, force weapon, again, take your pick here. You can use familiar or something else. This is kind of a freebie slot. I just use it as a damage slot, even though I'm not really trying to deal damage with this build right now. But just know that you do have, a damage slot here. Armor, you can use pretty much whatever you want. An interesting combination with this build is actually ice armor with ice reflect, but unfortunately this does not proc off your mirror images, so they can't be casting novas. It's just going to be you who's going to be casting frost novas with this, and in my experience testing this, it's not really worth it. So I just went with energy armor, and if I was to do this for damage dealing purposes, I would probably use pinpoint barrier. For now I'm just using prismatic armor just for demonstration purposes. Storm armor also works. Power of the Storm is great for spamming skills, so you can also do that. Mirror images, you can kind of pick what you want to do here. Now, duplicates work really well because they're going to spam more bubbles, so you're going to get 4 bubbles instead of 3 instantly. Or, sorry, yeah, 4 instead of 2 actually. So, but the problem is, unless you get a lot of cooldown reduction, you're not going to be able to keep them up indefinitely. So if I use duplicates, I'll cast them, and they'll do their bubble thing, but then they're going to go off cooldown, or they're going to disappear before I can cast them again. So until I get more cooldown reduction, I'm actually not using these, but I think this is going to give you the most bubbles. You can use Mocking Demise as well, but again, they don't last as long, and the stun that they do and the arcane damage that they explode into, the radius on that is pretty small, so it actually doesn't work as well as you think it would, because most of the stun locking is actually going to happen outside your bubbles. So I like to use Extensional Will because it increases their duration to 10 seconds. So with this cooldown reduction that I have, you'll see that I can actually cast them again. Like, watch this run out, and they'll still be here. So they're still here, and then they disappear. So I can actually keep them up 100% of the time, as long as they don't die. And that's very important for what we're going to be doing. And this also kind of shows the power of, cooldown reduction. So slow time, point of no return, obviously you could use other ones, but I'll show you with point of no return how many I can actually keep up with this amount of cooldown reduction. So that's 1, 2, before the first one disappears, 3, should be able to get 5, 4, and I should be able to get 5 before the first one disappears. Yep, there you go. So 5, almost 6. You could change this to Time Shell, which will further slow down mobs and reduce the cooldown to 12 seconds. And if I do that, I can actually keep up, I believe, 6 of them. 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then one of them's going to disappear. Yep, there goes one. So almost 7, actually. But then you don't get the stun, so it's not as good. Really no reason to do it. So I stick with point of no return because, again, it's going to stun mobs every time they enter or leave the bubble. And if you have overlapping bubbles, the Venn diagram, then they're going to get stunned every single time. And with mirror images, you're going to get a lot of them, as you guys just saw. Now, passive skills. This is kind of a freebie slot. For testing purposes, I'm using Blur. You could use pretty much anything here. Illusionist will work extremely well with this. At higher torment levels where you are actually taking 15% of your maximum life damage in a second, because then you'll just be able to spam this left and right. The reason I'm not going to show you guys this build yet with Illusionist is because I would have to kind of gear for it properly. Right now I have a lot of toughness, not too much sustain and very little damage. So, to use this optimally, you would actually have to be taking approximately 15% of your life in damage every second, or every few seconds. Like every second, but every 5 to 6 seconds or so. But you'd also have to have enough sustain to regenerate that life. Well, lifesteal's gone. This weapon doesn't have lifesteal on it, so I don't have that sustain, and I'm not going to try to gear for that at this point. That's something that's going to come in a later video, but just know that using Illusionist as a passive will make this 1,000 times even more effective. I use Evocation for just a flat 20% cooldown reduction, and then I use Astral Presence. Like, this is necessary. You're going to want to use Illusionist on higher torments, and this is also a freebie. So this is kind of like your freebie slot pre-70. You can do whatever you want here. So that's it for the skills. And you can do, you can swap these skills around a little bit, like your damage skill, do whatever you want. Now, as far as gear goes, ignore my damage and toughness numbers. This is just for testing purposes. You actually don't need that much gear to make this work. The only thing that you really need is Gesture of Orpheus. So, because you want the massive slow time cooldown reduction. And then you just want cooldown reduction on some of your other items. Like, I got these off the auction house basically for free. Like, this has 6% cooldown. This has 4%. And then I'm using a socketed helm with 7.5%. I'm not going to spend money on an overpriced diamond right now. But, at a high level, I believe this goes up to 20% cooldown reduction. So you'll be able to, the more cooldown reduction you have, the more you'll be able to spam this, the more effective it's going to become. And I also have some on my amulet. So you can do this cooldown reduction thing on most gear pieces. So basically that's what you're going to want. You're going to want a ton of cooldown reduction. The more you get, the better. And I'm going to show you guys this on Torment 1, again, just because I'm testing. But on higher torments, all you have to do is just get a little bit more life on hit, maybe get some life per second for sustain, and drop your toughness a little bit and increase your damage. Like, if I was doing this with maybe 1.5 million toughness, but like almost 300k damage, I could do this on Torment 6 very easily, and I would be going through it at a very fast rate. So, this is just something that's going to be balancing. So anyway, let's go ahead and I'll show you guys what this looks like on elites, and then we'll roll on Diablo. So obviously you guys saw how well this works on regular mobs. Now let's go ahead and find this in elite, because that was one of the other things from the video that I got some comments on for my permafreeze video, that, well, this doesn't work as well in elites because they have resistance to the crowd control. That's true. You're not going to be able to completely lock everything down 100%, but at least not with this gear. It may be possible, once you hit kind of certain breakpoints, but you can still do it a fair amount of time, to the point where you're avoiding like a very huge chunk of it. And right now, guys, I'm not even casting my damage spell. I'm just doing this just to show you how well you can lock them down. So obviously they're moving, but not very much. And how well this works is also going to be in part based on how good you are with your rotations, because you actually are going to have to intelligently rotate your crowd control so that once the stun wears off, you can pop Frost Nova, or your mirror images can pop Frost Nova. So that's basically how it's going to work. And the reason that this is a lot better, again, than just the regular slow time and mirror images build is because of the cooldown reduction, and because you can pop a lot more of these bubbles. You can have, like, I don't even know how many bubbles, but it's a lot. You can have a lot of bubbles. And if you had Illusionist on, and you were taking a lot more damage from each one of these hits, then you would just be looking at ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous amount of bubbles. And this is kind of what Blizzard is referring to when they talk about build changing legendaries. And again, like, you could just increase your damage and lock them down. It's going to take them forever to walk through all of these. See how long it takes them to get through all these bubbles before they actually get to you. So you can just stand there in the back and just wail on them with whatever spell you want. So that's how this build works on elites. And there were I did some research, and there are some builds using legacy gear that can kind of give you perma-stun capability, but they're they rely on a lot of AP on crit and a very high attack per second rate, neither of which is going to be feasible in ROS. Both of those are modified to, like, they're nerfed. So, the gear that you have now, it's just, those kind of builds aren't just going to work, because, you're going to be giving up way too much stats to make them work. So, anyway, this is how you can lock down Elite. Pretty straightforward. That's a lot of bubbles. And I don't even know how many that is. It's probably like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, like 6 or 7 bubbles. Who knows? It's a lot. So, because the thing is, these bubbles last for 15 seconds, but I can cast my mirror images every like 9 seconds or so. Or what's the cooldown? Cooldown 15 seconds? Yeah, I can cast them like every I don't know what it is, but I can cast them very often. So you end up with a lot of bubbles, basically. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like on Diablo. And this is a build that I'm going to work more on, because you can really combine this with other legendaries and make it work even better. So this is literally just using one piece. So let's see what Diablo has to say about this build. And for this, I'm actually going to show you guys how it works with Frostburns, because I am using a Frost skill. I'm using Arcane Orb. And Arcane Orb, if you guys watched the perma-freeze video that I put up yesterday, it doesn't have a very good proc coefficient. It's only like 13%, I believe, but it still will freeze. So we're just going to go ahead and switch this out for Frostburns, and we'll see how that works, because he should be getting frozen as well. And if you want even more freezing, really you could switch this to like Glacial Spike, but then your damage goes down too much. And I really wanted to show this with a high damage spell. A lot of people are going to be using something that's arcane damage here anyway. So let's take on Diablo real quick. And this is where your skill rotation is really going to come into play. So you're not going to be able to lock him down entirely, and I'm not casting Arcane Orb because I'm going to take him down too quickly. But you can see that he's actually locked down very, very well. Like, not permanently, but he's definitely going to get Stunlocked. He's going to get frozen. I'm going to wait till the freeze wears off so I can use mine again. That stun gives me a little bit of time. I can freeze again. Now I can cast mirror images. They're going to freeze him. Now I can get him to go on an edge. And this also relies on proper gameplay, because if you do this a lot, one thing you're going to have to kind of get good at, especially if you're doing this on a boss, is getting the edge of the bubble kind of right where the boss is. So, this isn't going to lock him down permanently, but if you look at what I'm doing, I'm not even dealing damage. I'm just kind of running around and just locking him down. So if you're doing this in the party, somebody else could be doing damage, or you could be spamming your damage skills yourself. You can basically do whatever you want here. So I can in between spam my orb and then lock him down again. So the rotations are going to come into play, and like I said, there's a lot of different skill combinations that you can use here to get even more crowd control. You can do this with a lightning build, where you use meteor with lightning bind. You could use paralysis. You could use glacial spike, which has a guaranteed freeze, and then just kind of work on your rotations. And with enough practice, you'll be able to get. I think it is possible to get 100% lockdown. It's just going to depend on what skills you have at your disposal, how good you are at your rotations, and that sort of thing. So anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have to exit because it's going to take him forever to kill me. But there you have it. So I'm going to link some relevant information in the video description below. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like this video if you like it. Thumbs up always helps, and I'll see you guys next time.